So just before we get started, everybody, I am recording and we are streaming live to YouTube. We're back in council chambers here. So just a reminder to everybody, we do need to use our microphones. Please turn them on and off for when you're speaking to not speaking. And that'll have to go through for the Zoom and the video. This goes for delegations as well as staff coming up to the table. And our people through Zoom, their sound should be coming out from a speaker over here. So I think that should be good to go.
So welcome to the Corporation of the Town of Kirkland Lake regular meeting of council of October 6, 2020. We'll have a moment of silence. Approval of the agenda.
I have a motion moved by Patrick Adams, seconded by Eugene Ivanoff. Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of council held on October 6, 2020, beginning at 4:40 p.m. be approved as circulated to all members of council.
All in favor? Carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. None noted. Item 4, petitions and delegations. Our first one is from our Member of Parliament, Mr. Charlie Angus. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. Very honored to be here tonight, and I'm hoping everyone is staying safe. My report tonight will be to update you on some of the work that we have been doing in the local region, as well as our work nationally in terms of the response to the pandemic. The last 7 to 8 months have been an extraordinary time, unprecedented for all of us. I think we are facing the biggest economic and medical catastrophe in a century. We've seen in the first wave that many issues that were underlying in Canadian society and around the world were suddenly exposed in sharp relief. The fact that we had to watch frontline workers crowdsourcing on Facebook for PPEs because we didn't have them in Canada was a real shock. The horrific suffering of seniors in the long-term care facilities has raised major questions that we as a nation need to address. And the fact that within 2 weeks of the first lockdown, millions of Canadians didn't have enough rent money to pay to get to the end of the month. It's really made us realize that the old normal that we so fondly remember before March 13th, that the deep problems that were there have been exposed by COVID. And the question for us going forward is, how do we get to a new normal? How do we get to a more sustainable world? How do we get to a more sustainable society so that people with better healthcare, so we're not left in the crisis that we were? When the lockdown came, our offices switched gears dramatically, and our staff began to just work the phones to address concerns people had. There were so many questions of uncertainty at the time. We had people from the north who were literally trapped all over the world that we had to get home. People were uncertain about what was happening with COVID. There was a lot of economic insecurity. And we felt that the number one job of our office in those days, and still, was to be there working virtually and answering the phones. I think the response across the North has been extraordinary. The social solidarity got us through that first wave. The willingness of people to work together, to be positive. We are now coming into the second wave where I think we're going to be heavily tested. And we really need to maintain that sense of social solidarity that is, to me, a fundamental of how we do things in Canada. We have to be listening to each other. We have to work together. And even at the political level, I think in the first round, we were all working on the same script or trying to. We have to find a way to keep doing that moving forward. So I want to just talk about some of the things that we have been involved in. One of the big issues when the crisis hit, we knew that EI would not cover the millions of Canadians who were economically being hammered, and EI would have been much too slow to get the response. The Democrats pushed for CERB, pushed it to be $2,000 a month. It was necessary to have a program that could give people enough of a backstop to pay their rent and stay on top of their bills. This was, I think, a big underlying factor in how we approach this with the federal government, with the Liberal government, is that an economic crisis will be made much worse if the personal finances of Canadians and the personal businesses, small businesses, are wiped out. We have to get people through this. So initially we were focused on the first wave, getting through people literally to October, when we thought maybe there'd be light at the end of the tunnel. So the CERB was $2,000 a month. People filled out forms. Millions. We saw at one point that 8.7 million Canadians at one point or another applied for CERB. That's an extraordinary amount of people who are dependent on it. Some people have been able to go back to work. Some people were facing short-term contracts and that to get them through. So CERB was the first thing. We realized also with small business was taking a serious hit. The Liberal government initially offered a 10% wage subsidy. We pushed for 75% because if we keep people working, again, it's the principle. If people still have jobs, it's much easier to restart the economy when we get out of this. So that was a big issue. The other huge problem, though, was the payroll of small businesses across Canada were being hammered. We saw that in the North. I was on part of the Timmins Chamber task force where we worked on plans and trying to really identify where were the problem areas that small business was facing. So what we found in Timmins, we were able to replicate in other areas as well as Kirkland Lake. A big help in this issue was FedNor. FedNor has put over $71 million in since the pandemic. We've got another, I believe, 22 million that have just been announced. We need to get, again, it's about getting us through this winter. So FedNor played a big role in terms of no interest loans for businesses, a $40,000 opportunity for businesses if they were just to get the cash flow to keep afloat. So that was a lot of work we were doing. The issues that were coming up from people calling us, a lot of it was childcare. Women took the brunt of the COVID pandemic. We see in the statistics, in the layoffs, in the fact that so many, especially in the first wave when kids had to be at home, who often ended up looking after them. I'm not dissing the men here. I know a lot of the men stepped up, but women played a huge role in that. So the issue of childcare became a big, big issue. And these things still remain on the table that we're trying to negotiate. I know that there's been talk about, well, what's this going to cost? The reality is the federal government is the only player with the fiscal capacity to actually do a lot of the heavy lifting right now with interest rates almost at zero. Private enterprise is not in a position to kickstart the economy right now, and in a number of areas, it's going to need federal support coming through. We've been working with the government on looking at issues that are outstanding. For example, housing. Building housing would certainly go a long way to alleviate some of the financial stress people are facing, but it would also help in the return for a more stable economy to get us through once we're out of the second phase. There's certainly a lot of push right now to get answers in terms of the failure in the healthcare system, the pandemic planning emergency stuff. This is all we're talking about in Ottawa. What happened? Why were we not as ready as we needed to be? I'm not at this point laying blame. I think we need answers because we need to know how to not get ourselves in this situation again. We did a number of initiatives with the Chamber and Timmins in terms of looking at issues of interest-free deferral on property tax installments, on water, waste, sewage. The elimination in Timmins was parking fees in business areas. Trying to coordinate government information because there were so many different programs out there. How did people access that? And again, when people called my office, they were able to work through that. There's a couple of issues that I think we really need to talk about. Certainly, we are going into the second wave now. The numbers look like we may actually peak much higher than the first wave. And that is very, very concerning. We're seeing stress already in some areas now in the hospital services. So I think the messaging is really, really important. I get a sense from some people, they're still wearing the masks, but they feel that maybe we're out of it. We're not. We may be coming into a very hard winter. And our focus in Parliament continually, we're saying to the government, we got to get people through this winter. Let's get through to next spring with as many, with people financially stable, with businesses able to survive. Then we can start to talk about what the recovery looks like. There's two areas that I think with the council that I'd ask for your help on. One is we've been dealing and focused on the pandemic of COVID, but the opioid pandemic is claiming many, many lives. We know it's a problem in all our communities. Unfortunately, much of the federal funding for opioid and homelessness supports the government let slip over the last year. We really need to push, and I've been pushing the government to get their heads around the need to work with cities, municipalities, communities on a grassroots, on mental health, on opioid dealings, on dealings with the fact that we've got in many areas people who are homeless because of the drugs. We have to deal with this issue. So I think I might be asking Kirkland Council to work with us a little bit in time, do some larger advocacies across the north, and get the feds back to the table on this. The one thing I'd like to maybe leave you with as a thought is the opportunity that's out there right now. We know that in the throne speech, the Liberal government announced a major investment in the electric car industry as part of the move towards Canada's sustainability. They're going to put $500 million into the Ford plant in retooling. There's talk about a $2 billion investment in electric vehicle production, which would be enormous and will certainly kickstart manufacturing in Ontario. But to make electric vehicles, they need copper, they need nickel, they need cobalt, they need gold. The metal production to make the batteries, I think, gives us a real opportunity. Because right now, many metals that are being sourced from places like Congo, which has a horrific human rights record. We know that metals can be sourced from many other jurisdictions where they have low standards, low environmental standards, low labor standards, where they're using much dirtier forms of energy like coal to smelt. I'm really looking forward to pressing the government on a northern sustainable resource commitment. That if we're going to say to the big car plants, the federal government will invest in clean energy vehicles, well, then we want to have clean metals. I think in Northern Ontario, we have a huge advantage because we have in our minds, we have the highest environmental standards in the world. We have Indigenous agreements for mineral production. Do we need to do more? Yes. I'm not saying we just try and get in on this. I think we need to say we want a commitment that the federal government will source Canadian metals, and we will be asking the mining industry to work with us to move towards higher green standards in terms of emissions. I think this could be a win-win story with a $2 billion investment in vehicles. It gives us a real opportunity right now. The search for cobalt, for example, and I'm not just saying this because I'm from Cobalt, but the market's showing they're desperate to find cobalt in other jurisdictions outside of the Congo because of the horrific human rights abuses. I think a green Northern Sustainability Resource Commitment would be a win-win for our industry. It would give us a chance to also make better investments so we have more sustainable natural resources. So I think it's an idea that we could really work with our mining-based communities. I think could champion this, and so I'm very open to working with you and trying to get, I think, communities across the north to say to the feds, okay, you're putting that money into electric vehicles, great. You want to get to sustainable low carbon futures, great. We're there with you, but we want to be able to do it with metals that are also sourced from a better environmental standard than what we see in some other jurisdictions like China. So that is my report. And I will also say that we are moving our office in Kirkland Lake next month. I would invite you all to the opening, but we think we'll wait till the spring when we have a chance to put more people into the office. We have our office is at the old Commodore on Duncan, right near the Legion. So we're really pleased for our commitment in Kirkland Lake. Kirkland is a major town for us. We do a lot of our work out of that Kirkland office, and we will be in Kirkland Lake with a big presence with our new office. So thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'll take them.
Thank you for that delegation. Any questions from fellow councillors? Councillor Owen?
Yeah, Mr. Angus, you said you may be asking the municipality for help with the opioid crisis. As you know, addiction is very close to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of help do you think you'd be looking for?
We were looking, I have been writing the health minister on the surprising, and I was very surprised to see how much the funding they've let drop on having resources for dealing with opioid addiction. Again, the crisis we're facing in our communities. We're looking to craft a motion that explains to the government what the need is and why we need them back at the table, and to get municipalities to support that motion so that it's going across, because we're here, I'm getting calls from all over about the need to have better resources. We have great frontline people doing the work, but I think we need more help, and the feds need to be at it. So I'd like to ask, I'll come back with a motion that if the council is agreeable, to see if the council will approve it, and then we can start sending these on to the federal government and say, you got to be a real positive partner with us in this.
Thank you.
Through your worship, if you can put me in the queue.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Angus, I agree with Councillor Owen. One thing that was announced at our recent Police Services Board was I believe it's through the Canadian Mental Health, that there'll be 2 designated staff that will be working directly with the OPP on overdose calls and mental health issues. So they would show up when there's an incident that does occur, and work with the patient or the resident to help eliminate those addictions. So I think that's a good start.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a pilot project throughout the province, and with having 2 designated just at Kirkland Lake, I think it's going to help some. It's not going to be the end-all answer, but you're right. There's a lot of work to be done, especially in the funding area. We do have a local committee that's of about 12, 13 people that are working hard in prevention, drug prevention, and mental health issues. So it is certainly a focus of there's members of council on that, including Councillor Owen and myself, and other people connected with the town. So we fully support that for sure. And we hope, as you say, there will be more funding come available. And we look forward to supporting your what you wanted to do.
Well, I thank you for that. And I have been speaking with some of the members in the task force that you've established in Kirkland Lake, and I'd like to be engaged in any way I can. We're very much engaged in the city of Timmins on this, and they're really trying to bring all the players to the table on this, because again, we need all hands on deck right now. Certainly one of the things that's helped in Timmins is the walking in the community, where police are going with mental health workers from Living Space, the homeless center there, so that they're trying to be able to tie, community safety with mental health, with getting help for people. So that's a really good model. So I'm really pleased to see that this is happening in Kirkland Lake.
Yep.
Excuse me, any more questions? So thank you for taking the time out of your schedule for joining us tonight. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And stay safe, my friends.
Thank you. We've got a motion to accept this delegation.
A motion moved by Stacy White, seconded by Rick Owen. Be it resolved that the delegation by MP Charlie Angus be received.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Charlie.
Next item is a delegation from Penny Fornell for the encroachment on Kirkland Avenue in Swastika. So make sure you press on the Pete on the green lights on to speak.
Well, thank you, everyone, for having us. I'm a bit nervous, but I'm going to try to take my time and go slow and go through all of this. I've made notes because I'm not great at speaking either. So good evening, everyone. I feel that most of you are up to speed on all the information. So instead of going through a he said, she said back and forth, I think everybody's read exactly what this is about. I will say that the notes and some of the information weren't given to us, so we were kind of a little bit blindsided, and they may have been lost in emails. We're not sure what happened there. So when we got all of the information, we were a bit shocked. It could be because of the fact that Gary changed jobs and that email didn't go there. It didn't get to us anyways. But in saying all of this, I'd like to propose that the town maybe adapt sending some of the notices through registered mail so that everybody is sure and clear that they get everything, so that they're not embarrassed like we were and shocked. So I'm not here to fight that, but I'm here to resolve our situation. We've spoken privately to most of the councillors here and explained our situation. Also Dennis, who's in hospital, and my swastika resident was also informed, and he really wanted to be here for us today. And I actually spoke to Sheena earlier, and he said he was rooting for us. So thanks to Dennis. So here's our position. We bought the church. I'm gonna say quotes because I don't know when we're gonna stop calling it the church. I think a lot of people will still continue to call it the church in Swastika, with the intent of reviving an iconic building in our community, as well as making it our beautiful home. We knew that there would be challenges, and believe me, the extra struggles and expenses have been many. We accept that and resolving them on our own. Parking has always been an issue. This is the main reason that it was sold in the first place. We looked at the potential and came up with some of our own plans and options. We initially changed the property from a commercial to a residence or residential, and went through all the proper channels to do so. At no time did we have any conditions there. At that time, shortly after, we requested to add our covered parking with a container, and to the best of our knowledge, it was approved by the council at that time, as in your notes. And at that time, the mayor did state that should we do anything that closely resembles what we have done to our home on Hilltop, that he would be in full support. If anybody else, if you don't know where we lived on Hilltop Drive, and we redid that entire home inside and out as well. We do know that lots of things in our church were not to code. And we know, of course not, it was built in the 1950s. So things have changed drastically. The roof pitch is certainly unheard of, and the angle of the building, as well as the fact that it's close to the road, is relative to a church, which was made way back then. So to get down to business, no, we haven't done everything right, clearly. And unless you own a construction company, you can't really know all the rules and regulations. We had the complete assumption on our part that everything had been approved for our container. We've obviously stated that a few times. We surely wouldn't have done the locates, and we've done that for the second time, cleared and leveled the land or purchased a $5,000 container had we thought it wasn't all approved. We wouldn't have spent the money. That would be crazy. This was time consuming and already very expensive. When I received the letter from the town, I assumed it was the yearly encroachment fee and that we would have to start paying it. I was shocked and disappointed that when we were told to remove the container. We would like to purchase the property to the right of our building. This will alleviate any future problems with the town. It is the 8 feet in which the container sits. And I think everybody's seen the drawings and even have driven by. Most of you know where it sits and how it sits and what it's going to look like once we side it and everything else. The crazy roof pitch, obviously, we need our cars protected. So we need something that's going to be, it's going to house our vehicles. As agreed before, we will remove it for any road or water maintenance at any time needed. The locates had been completed and the town was present for all of that, and it does not sit or interfere with any services. We will side it and make it look like it was always there. So the way it's situated, when you look at it and now you see the container beside it, once it's sided, it will look like it always belonged there because we'll encompass it just as we've done the outside. Of course. I completely understand that in its current state it doesn't look quite right, but it will look like it's always belonged in that spot. Snow removal was brought up, but that's not an issue, and that can be clearly seen just by driving by. And everybody who we invited over, we invited some councillors over as well. They know it, and also Dennis, we walked over and he knows, and our neighbor, where our neighbor's parked is the same distance where we are as well. Road allowance, well, again, we wouldn't be requesting it if we just had a spot to park that was safe for our vehicles. And of course, it isn't a code because it's an old building. Town strategic plan. All I can say is I'm not sure about all of that, but I'm pretty sure no one's going to be building near us in the future. We're right on the main road, and our neighbors are been neighbors forever, and swastika right there is not growing, so I don't see any difficulties in that area. There's no risk to residents. We take full responsibility of the container in compliance with all the rules and regulations. We surely want to because it's our cars that are under there. We would really like a decision made because we want to get it sided and get it done so it looks nicer. We don't like it looking like that right now at all. We're just waiting for a decision to be made so that we can proceed and make it look like a beautiful home. We do realize that this purchase will be an exception, but it's a church. The whole thing is an exception, really. So the part I just want to end with is that it's a bit personal, but I feel as if it needs to be said. We've never, ever had a problem with the town or any businesses. We work hard, pay our bills, and I've never even had a speeding ticket. We've kept our properties well manicured, clean, safe, and have always respected our property and neighbors. I actually share a fence with one of our councillors here for many years. No problems ever. And other than that funny looking little lime green car I had in the driveway for a few years, we've kept our place pretty nice. I was a preschool teacher for years, and now I own a family portrait small business. I work for the local pharmacy, one of them, and also the provincial police. Unfortunately, due to COVID right now, Gary's unemployed. The church is a heritage building, and more importantly, a beautiful building and a focal point in both Swastika and a warm welcome as you come into Kirkland Lake. There probably isn't a week that goes by that someone doesn't stop me, myself or Gary, to say, we just love what you've done. It's beautiful. Thank you for reviving it, especially the Swastika residents. They're just over the top. Everybody there walking around, they stop, they talk to us. We've even tried to fix the bell. The stories we get and the memories, we treasure all of them, and we attempt to beautify it as well as keeping the integrity of the church. We even donated the pews and all the stained glass back to the church that moved over to the school as a respect to them. We've made very good friends with our neighbors, and they both are, like, especially the ones right beside us, they are both 100% in support of everything we've done and would be happy to give letters or whatever is needed to help us, because if anybody's going to be affected by something there, it'll be them that live right across the street. We give back to the community, and we have so much friends and family here, and I truly love this town. Our children have grown up here, and we don't ever want to have problems or conflict. This is a small town, and I surely don't want the legacy of this church, our home, or ourselves, any bad memories attached to it. We are part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation. I'll open up to questions from council. Councillor Adams.
Yes, thank you, Penny, for coming out. I always respect any ratepayer who comes to the table to come into this atmosphere and present a case like that yourself. I would certainly be all in favor of doing the registered mail as well, as it is part of our strategic plan to improve staff accountability to council and residents, as well as improve communications. So instead of becoming he says, if we follow our operational plan, we can do registered mail and have things done accordingly. So as for your place, it is certainly a beautiful place in Swastika, and certainly when you come into the community, it's just stands right there. And I would be in favor of the encroachment fee, but I'm only one person, right? So thank you very much.
So our wish, if you don't mind, Eugene, if I could speak, our wish would be to purchase that land. However, the encroachment would be a very close second. So thank you for that.
Councillor Ivanoff.
Yeah, I agree with Patrick Adams. I think you've done a great job with that church. It looks beautiful, the inside and the outside. I've seen both now. Your container is not an eyesore. I would have a concern about the engineering, just to make sure that it doesn't collapse when snow comes off your roof, because it does have that super steep pitch. That would be a concern. But I mean, if you can get somebody to come back and say that it's a safe building, I would have no issue with that being added onto the side, and encroachment probably is what the city is looking at. I'm thinking from what I hear, but it's you've done an amazing job with that building.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eugene.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has a problem with what you've done to the building. Where council is kind of caught in the middle is that we're supposed to follow provincial standards and policies. And unfortunately, I think what's happened here is people have made statements or commitments in the past that were not done properly through bylaw or resolution. Some of those people may not have had the authority to say what they said. Now, that's no fault to you, okay? Because how would you know when somebody from the town said something to you, you automatically assume they had the authority to say that. And I'm not going to get into who was right, who was wrong, because that's history.
Exactly.
What I do know is that you were left with the impression that everything you did had been approved and was according to the way it should be.
Correct.
I've been by the site more than once. I shouldn't say the site. I've been by your house more than once. And again, I don't have a big problem with it, except I would like to see an engineer's report. And just by coincidence, I was watching a show the other day, and the people were building a house out of containers. And they stated in that show, because the walls are an integral part of the support system for the container, they had to have an engineer's study done when they cut out large sections. I've looked at the driveways in your neighborhood and on my own street, and the situation that your container is creating is no better or no worse than a lot of other driveways in Kirkland Lake, and in fact, in your own neighborhood. I'm not concerned about having space for the snow to go. Actually, when I went by yesterday, there was a car parked sort of angled towards your front door. There's lots of space there, should you choose to put snow there or wherever. And there's also space behind the church as well. So, I mean, it's an awkward situation we find ourselves in. But I certainly don't want to deter you from your project. And I don't believe that you went ahead and did this on your own and then said, oh, well, we've already done it. Now we'll go to council and make up the story. So I have a tendency to support what your request, well, support a encroachment agreement with certain conditions in it that would protect the town from liability. But I also want to send a message out to other residents that this is not precedent setting. We're not saying go ahead and do whatever the heck you want. And once you've done it, we'll say, oh, that's okay. No, that's not the situation. So, thank you.
Through your worship, if I may comment.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm along the same lines as Councillor Owen. I would not support sale of additional strip of property. I would support the encroachment with certain conditions, including the engineering report. I believe the fact that there was some indication from a previous employee or whatever the case may be, we won't get into that. Or you would not have gone ahead as far as you did. I've been out there several times and driven by it. Your vehicle does not stick out that far, as Councillor Owen noted. It's not what we want as far as from our strategic plan and provincial guidelines that are set forth. However, if you meet the conditions that were briefly outlined by Councillor Owen, I would support this as well. I must say, aesthetically, you've done a fantastic job. It was just like your house on Beaver Hill. I know you're trying to do things right, and you are a good neighbor. There's no question about that. So, thank you.
Councillor White.
I absolutely agree with my fellow council members. The work you do is just outstanding, just beautiful, beautiful. Unfortunately, council is a series of unpleasant decisions, and we've been left holding the bag far too often for previous councils for not following the rules that are set out. We do have clear and defined policies that this council has recently reviewed and read, and the rules are sadly quite defined. So as unpleasant a decision that it is, I believe the townspeople of Kirkland Lake deserve to read our policies and know what to expect out of council, administration, and staff. So I am so sorry, but I would not support this at this time. But I'm only one.
So the decision won't be made right away. There's a report from staff coming ahead. I'll just add, like, yes, you've done amazing work on the building. I've driven a few times to go have a look at it, and I share in Councillor White's position. We're stuck. We have to follow, like, we can't pick and choose, like, certain, we advocate, we're all about policy, but we can't pick and choose when we follow our policies. We have to, and we've got amazing staff and they're presenting us a position, and there's a reason why they're presenting it that way. It might not be a pleasant one, excuse me, but it's sometimes that's how it goes. So, but like I said, that will come after the report from staff in a few minutes. So again, thank you for coming. Quickly.
Could we just try to remember that this was a church also? So there was no parking there whatsoever. So when Penny and I last met with the town planning department, we had asked for an alternative suggestion to our parking. Back in the day, it was okay to park on the street and whatnot. Today, it isn't. The pitch of the roof, as Penny clearly mentioned, the snow coming off the roof will land on our vehicles. There's no other place to park. So we really were kind of stuck there. At the time when we rezoned the church, we didn't think about it right there and then. But it's about a month after we come to council and it was agreed to rezone to a residential. That's when I started thinking, well, wait a minute, we got to park our vehicles somewhere. So I came back to the town. I met with Mr. Inoue and the former staff and went through, painstakingly went through a number of meetings to get us to where we kind of are today. But we don't have another option. We can't park on the street. So our intention always was to make sure that that sea container is in compliance with whatever your directives are, or we're kind of stuck here, guys. And just please think about that before you render a decision. I'd mentioned to the planning department, there's got to be a grandfather clause here somewhere, not knowing, but I hope there is, because it'd be a shame if I have to take that off and we have no place to park our vehicles. So I think it is a unique situation. Please just consider that when you're rendering your decision.
Thank you. Have a good, yeah, we'll move on. So we have a motion to accept the delegation.
We have a motion moved by Rick Owen, seconded by Patrick Adams. Be it resolved that the delegation by Penny and Gary Fornell be received.
All in favor? Carried. Acceptance and minutes and recommendations.
Motion moved by Eugene Ivanoff, seconded by Stacy White. Be it resolved that council accept the minutes of the regular meeting of council held September 22nd, 2020.
All in favor? Carried. Item 6, reports from municipal officers and communication. The first report we are getting is from CEO Rick McGee on COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Owens, through you to members of council and his worship participating electronically on Zoom. MP Charlie Angus's delegation was quite appropriate in recognizing the challenging and difficult times for all residents globally. And I think staff would just like to add to the MP's comments, the Premier's comments, Ontario Health, Temiskaming Health Units comments. We're going to get through this. We have to be vigilant on the eve of Thanksgiving. We have to exercise caution, vigilance. We have to practice continual hand washing, the wearing of masks. And if I can look at our long-term care staff and personnel across the province, across the country, they have proven time and time again that the universal precautions, the hand washing, the masking, the distancing work. And they are keeping our most vulnerable residents safe through their vigilance. So if I can say nothing other than well done to everyone, but we must be even more committed as we move forward and toward Christmas if we're going to suppress the spread of COVID and overcome this very, very difficult and challenging time. So with that, we will go through the same lineup of speakers, and Ms. Loach extends her regrets. She has come down with a cold. She has been swabbed with COVID, and she has provided me with her update from Tech Pioneer residents that I will provide to you, Mr. Acting Mayor. The staff at Tech Pioneer residents, as at any long-term care facility, continue the surveillance programs and are swabbed for COVID every 14 days. And for those of you who have undergone a COVID test, you know how unpleasant it is. So the fact that our healthcare workers are enduring that simple test every 14 days, our empathy goes out to them for that, but that is their dedication and commitment. The residents and family members are enjoying the in-person visiting as well as the outside visiting, and it's going over extremely well. Some family members are experiencing delays with respect to the COVID testing, and in watching today's address from the provincial government, there have been problems with respect to the current COVID testing mechanisms where there is a shortage of the reactant kits. And they are addressing that, and they foresee within the next 4 to 6 weeks, there will be an additional testing program added to the inventory that will address an additional 30,000 tests on a daily basis. So be patient, be vigilant with respect to the testing. And finally, with respect to the residents at Tech Pioneer residents, the new precautions that have been put in place for long-term care and visiting apply only to Toronto, Ottawa, and Peel region. They do not currently apply to any other regions in Ontario. But I suspect and anticipate that if the spread of COVID isn't reduced in the very near future, the provincial government will also start to include other areas. And I can advise that some long-term care facilities outside of those areas are voluntarily limiting visiting. So for the family members of those residents, stay tuned to updates from Ms. Loach and her staff at Tech Pioneer residents. And this is all about keeping the residents and families safe at Tech Pioneer residents. Having said that, Mr. Acting Mayor, I'll turn it over to Ms. Bonnie Sackrider now for an update on COVID across the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. Through you, Councillor Owens, to Council. With the continuing high number of cases being reported in Ontario, public health measures are tightening. The update of the rules for areas in Stage 3 under the Reopening Ontario Act means that all employees, volunteers, and contract workers must be screened daily upon entry into any municipal facility. Updated screening measures are being utilized actively by all workers and actively and passively by members of the public, depending on which facility they're entering. With the government announcing the pause of social circles and advising Ontarians to allow close contact only with people living in their own household, as many meetings as possible are being held virtually or being postponed until restrictions are loosened. When an in-person meeting is essential, physical distancing is enforced. Under the order, sports and recreational activities are permitted following all directives from the Province of Ontario, Public Health, and the various provincial sport organizations. Following these protocols, Kirkland Lake Minor Hockey Association will be the first organized user group to utilize the arena beginning after Thanksgiving. A progressive rollout beginning October 13th with modifications over time as allowed by various levels of authority will be our procedure. Over to you, Mr. Gorman.
Thank you, Ms. Ackrider. Through your worship to council. Our pandemic pay program that was previously announced is concluded in August, and we've submitted our final reconciliations to the Ministry of Long-Term Care. Subsequent to the closure of this program, the province announced another new initiative, which was aimed at boosting hourly wages for personal support workers, which will impact the operations at our TPR facility. This program is anticipated to run from October through March 2021, and it looks to be $3 per hour for PSWs working in long-term care home settings. In regards to our Safe Restart program funding, the province is in process of distributing those funds, and we expect to receive them in short order. As you are well aware, this is the first phase, and it was intended to fund all municipalities across the province. Phase 2 funding will be a decision that we'll have to make this month, as we do have a deadline faced on October 30th. Funding in phase 1 was intended to adequately cover 2020 pressures. And then the intent is to phase 2 fund those who have been hardest hit. Staff will be preparing a forecast of our 2020 estimated impacts for the October 20th meeting, along with a recommendation concerning phase 2 for Kirkland Lake. I'll turn it over now to Mr. Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. That concludes the staff update on COVID-19. We're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Nope. So we'll have a motion to accept the report.
Motion moved by Patrick Adams, seconded by Rick Owen. Be it resolved that the verbal update titled COVID-19 update be received.
All in favor? Carried. Item 6.2, request to encroach onto Kirkland Avenue in Swastika. Ashley Bilodeau, Director of Development Services. Sorry.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Owens. Through you to Council, we have received a request to encroach onto the Kirkland Avenue road allowance in Swastika Avenue. The applicants have recently placed an altered storage container immediately abutting their structure, which encroaches onto the road allowance. So we have had some correspondence back and forth with the applicants who are made aware of the necessary process. They did, however, proceed to place a structure there without an encroachment agreement or a building permit being issued. So I don't want to get into all of the details of why we're not wanting to recommend approval of this application. They are structured in the report, but essentially the recommendation from staff is to not proceed with a requested encroachment or a land sale. And we are suggesting instead that the structure be removed. So I am available for questions if there are any, and I do have Mr. Riverde here as well from a public works standpoint.
So we've got several houses in Kirkland Lake or property owners that are in the same situation, the same boat where parking is an issue. If you're in a downtown core, you're struggling, you're getting tickets and you are fighting with bylaw enforcement because you're getting tickets on a regular basis. What alternatives, like, yeah, we've got a procedure, a policy to follow, and it's not always pleasant. So what alternatives is there in this case, or are there any alternatives in this case for a compromise?
Through you, Acting Mayor Owens, to council, the alternatives for everybody is you park on street during the summer months. There's no issues with that. Winter, we can't park on streets. That becomes a problem. What we typically do is once the snow starts to fly, the driveways typically get bigger. And so when there is a sidewalk that is not maintained in winter months, those areas do get elongated on where they can park their cars, and they would not be ticketed. In this instance, I do think it would be difficult for Mr. and Mrs. Furnell to get an entrance permit from the other side of the property, as it would be it's a Highway 66 road allowance, so they'd have to get MTO permission to do that, and I highly doubt that they would allow for another entrance onto the highway at that intersection, so it would be difficult. I mean, the big issue right now would be the structure itself being on the building, or being on that road allowance, not the fact that they're parking on that area. That's the problem.
So if you park back from, like, okay, so the structure's removed and you park back away from the building, but still off the street, is that somewhat, like, I'm not saying I want to go against the bylaw, but I mean, you're stuck. You've invested a lot of money into a home, and I get it. I've done home renovations and it gets incredibly pricey very, very quickly. So you don't want to see your investment go to waste, but you also, the bylaws there. The bylaws are there. It's clear that structure shouldn't be there. So unfortunately, I can't vote in favor of leaving the structure there, but I don't want to leave the homeowner high and dry either. So, Councillor White.
Is there an option for removing the structure if they were to put like a wooden balcony out the side? If it was a wooden structure, would this still apply? If it was just like a normal balcony type cover, would this all still apply? Or is it just the CCAN or whatever that's the issue?
Through to council, any encroachments onto the road allowance would require an encroachment agreement.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is, like, we have these residents who clearly did their due diligence in trying to go through the process and make sure everything's done okay. But there seems to be this communication gap that was missing where things weren't said. I haven't seen any proof or need to see proof, but this just becomes he says, she says at that point. For any change management that exists, it's plan, do, assess, act. So yes, we reviewed that, but we also didn't see this kind of situation that existed within the policy. So when there's alternative consideration within the report that can allow the encroachment, I would be in favor of going that direction with this.
And maybe I can help out with that, Mr. Acting Mayor. Staff, I am proud of the job they've done on this. And this isn't about change management. This isn't about anything. This is about staff did their job. And this is the exact process that should be followed. And it's within council's purview if they wish to approve an encroachment agreement in this situation. But this is exactly how this should work in a municipality where staff follows the rules and the guidelines and the processes in place. And my review of the file suggests that staff very clearly communicated. So I want to be clear about this. Staff did a very good job on this. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, I want to make it clear too that I have no problem with staff's recommendation. They did their job. They did what they're professionally supposed to do. And they made a recommendation to council based on facts, okay? It's clear. If we want to be hard and cold, we can go with just the straight facts. And in most cases, I would be in total agreement with staff on that. My problem is that this issue predates us coming on to council. And I'm not going to take sides on who said what, when, what was said. But common sense tells me that the Fresnels would not have gone ahead with that structure if they did not have at least a reasonable understanding that it had been approved. And like I said earlier, this is, if council decides to approve this, it's not a precedent and it's not an invitation to everybody in the town, go ahead and do what you want. No. But I think in this case, we have to be a little bit human. And I want to make it quite clear that staff did their job, and as the CAO said, did their job well. These are the rules, these are the regulations, this is the law. But also, as the CAO said, as council, we can make an exception. And normally, I'm not a big fan of making exceptions to the rules. But if we do make an exception, there has to be an engineering study done to ensure that the structure and the planned deck or whatever that's going to go on top, that the structure can support that. There has to be, in any agreement, should council approve it, protection for the municipality against any potential liability. We have to protect our other ratepayers should that structure have to be moved by the town for any reason. And so I'm going to support the Fresnels in this, but it's because I consider this a handshake deal that we inherited and now must deal with.
Your worship, if I may speak.
Go ahead, Mayor Kiley.
I go back to the previous council, and while the Fresnels have worked on this property for a little while, the subject didn't come up at council that I can recall. And whether there was a verbal go ahead, a handshake, as you might want to call it, there's some reason in my mind to believe that, because what happened during the last council, that C-can that was put up on Nipissing Lane for the Zamboni machine required a change to the zoning. And before it was even passed at council, and this is going back, and it doesn't make the town look very good at carrying out their own rules, but that C-can was placed on the property before the zoning change was made. So there has been some history there of these handshake kind of deals. We don't want to see that. This council doesn't, but I do have some sense of responsibility that this may have taken place over the past few years before our time and before any of our works department people got involved in it, who are here today. So I'm not taking anything away from the report that was done. As a matter of fact, I have to agree wholeheartedly. What the recommendations are correct, and that's the way they should be. However, I do think that there was a handshake. I believe there was a handshake deal made. So it's very worrisome that these things happen. And in this case, nobody wins and we have egg on our face. But I want to see that engineering report, and I do not want to sell part of the road allowance. I would consider the encroachment agreement, but I want to hear more about it.
Ms. Bilodeau, if the CCAN was to be removed and they just park there for the winter, is that something that would work away from the building a bit? Like, would they be harassed by law enforcement? No, excuse me, not harassed, wrong word. Would by law enforcement apply the rules?
Through you to council, what we do in other areas, when there is snow on the ground, those boulevards do get water.
Yeah.
They come more out to the road allowance. And
Yeah.
we do allow people to park there, recognizing that there is a little area to park. So as long as it's not inhibiting road maintenance, we typically let those go.
Okay.
Not to say that it is compliant with bylaw.
It's not compliant, but it's an acceptable alternative, so they're not stuck without parking. Okay. So do we have to modify the resolution because there's no mover or seconder on this one? So how do we move forward?
So through you, Acting Mayor Owens, we just had a amendment requested for the mover and seconder on this one. So if I can put it to the floor for who would like to be the mover and seconder for this motion? In general, to start the process. Councillor White and a seconder. Councillor Owen. So the current motion being discussed right now is moved by Stacy White, seconded by Rick Owen. Be it resolved that report number 2020-dev-052 entitled Request to Encroach onto the Kirkland Avenue Road Allowance in Swastika be received, that staff be directed to reject the request to encroach onto the Kirkland Avenue Road Allowance in Swastika, and that the applicants be advised to remove the encroaching structure no later than October 30th, 2020.
So do we vote on that, or do you, Councillor Owen?
Yeah, I just want to make a clarification. I know that I'm breaking the rules by speaking one way and I'm going to vote one way and seconding it. I did that just to get it on the floor so that we can vote on it.
So as it's presented, all in favor? 2. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion defeated? Motion defeated. Councillor Owen?
Do we now need a new motion for the planning or the development? What's the name of your department? So,
Through you to council, development services.
for development services to come back with a new resolution for council to vote on and an encroachment agreement so that we can read it prior to voting on it?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Owens, through you, and I apologize, you can't see me smiling, but my response is council can do whatever they want here. If there's a motion that a member wishes to put forward, I would recommend that you receive it. So you haven't received the report yet, you should receive that report, and then however you would like to proceed. If be it resolved that the report be received and that staff be directed to prepare and present an encroachment agreement bylaw to council at the October 20th meeting. I think that would be sufficient, and staff would draft that bylaw and council would have an opportunity to look at it. I would suggest that staff would let the applicants see that bylaw and agreement prior to it coming forward to council, in the hopes that they would be agreeable, recognizing that if what staff has inserted into the report isn't agreeable to the Fornells, staff would not remove those sections from an encroachment agreement that we believed. And we might see Mr. and Mrs. Furnell back here on October 20th, presenting their case of why they don't support the encroachment agreement. But I think that'll at least perhaps move this in the direction that council wishes.
Councillor Owen?
Yeah, I'd be willing to make that motion if our CAO could repeat it. I just have one question. Is that enough time for this work to be done by our staff?
Through Acting Mayor Owens to council, yes, that would be fine.
So Councillor Owen has a motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Adam? And Councillor Owen, what would you like the motion to be?
That we accept the report from staff and that we direct staff to draw up an encroachment agreement for the property owned by the Fennells on Kirkland Lake Avenue Road in Swastika and bring the matter to our October 20th meeting.
Okay, so the motion is,
If I may interrupt, could we not add that within that motion, that an engineering report on that structure be included for review from council as well?
Councillor Owen?
I was assuming that in the encroachment agreement, it would include the requirement for an engineering study. So I don't think it's necessary to have one done prior to the agreement being drawn up, but it is necessary to have it in the agreement that they must have an engineering study done to show that it's structurally sound.
I'm fine with it as long as that's acceptable to the planner.
Do you want me to comment? Or?
Sure, if you want to come.
Through you to council. It's actually part of the building permit application process. So in order to get a building permit, a structural integrity report will be required and a sign off from an engineer because it has been significantly altered. So that is part of the building permit process.
So all this will have to be in place before this can come back to council? No? Okay.
Do the encroachment agreement first to make sure that they have the ability to encroach. Once that's signed and off and done, we then can issue the building permit.
And
We
then,
can't get the building permit unless structural integrity report is completed and signed off by a professional engineer.
and then what happens if he doesn't sign off? That
There's alterations that can be made to the structure in order to bring it to compliance.
And all of the conditions listed in Ms. Bilodeau's report under the alternative section will be included and presented in the encroachment agreement.
okay, so we have a motion moved by Rick Owen, seconded by Patrick Adams. Be it resolved that report number 2020-dev-052 entitled Request to Encroach onto the Kirkland Avenue Road Allowance in Swastika be received, and that staff be directed to present an encroachment agreement for the Kirkland Ave property in Swastika at the October 20th meeting.
all in favor? Carried. Item 6.3, airport land lease. Miss Ashley Bilodeau, Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Owens. Through you to council, we did receive a request to extend a lease that is currently in existence with Dr. Durocher for a hangar at the airport. So the typical terms are a 5-year agreement. So it's a lease agreement for the hangar itself. We are proposing that the lease actually go from 5-year to 10-year, just because it has been there for about 20 years. And rather than bring it back to council every 5, we figured it was appropriate to extend it to 10. This lease does not impede the daily operations at the airport, and it does contribute to annual revenue. So there's the $800 and some application or associated user fee. There's also revenue coming from the fuel that's sold at the airport as well for the aircraft that utilizes the hangar. This type of activity does encourage business activity to occur at the airport as well, which is great and is in line with our official plan and the strategic plan. Again, available for questions if there are any.
Through you, your worship, just to confirm, Ms. Bilodeau, the applicant, Dr. DeRoche, he is fine with the 10-year, has this been discussed with him?
Rick, did we talk to them?
Through you, your worship, Mr. DeRoche is a very difficult man to get a hold of, as he does not live in our community. But it's of the assumption that he would be in favor of the lease agreement, because it's believed he has no intentions on moving his aircraft or the hangar anytime soon.
Okay.
So if there's no further questions, we got a motion on this one.
Motion moved by Rick Owen, seconded by Patrick Adams. Be it resolved that report number 2020-Dev-046 entitled Land Lease Agreement Kirkland Lake Airport be received, and that a bylaw be presented to council to authorize the execution of a 10-year land lease agreement with Dr. Bill DeRoche for the land his private hangar occupies at the Kirkland Lake Airport.
All in favor? Carried. Item 6.4, Waste Reduction Week 2020. Ms. Ashley Bilodeau.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Owens. Through you to council, we are looking to declare, we would like council to declare October 19th to 25th as Waste Reduction Week. This is a national campaign, and it's to raise awareness around the sustainable and responsible consumption. So what we intend to do as staff is to highlight the initiatives that Kirkland Lake has undertaken and does regularly undertake, such as the hazardous waste event that just transpired, the scrap metal that's available or available for drop off at the landfill, and our electronics waste bins. So we are planning on focusing on other areas, which includes textiles, e-waste, plastics, and food waste during that week, just to bring some awareness to waste reduction. And then I did want to put a note here that the electronics bin that typically comes in for fall free tipping is not available this year, and that's a direct result of COVID. So they were not scheduling any further events for the rest of the year. So that is not available, but the free tipping vouchers have been going very well, and we're issuing those regularly. So again, here for any questions that we have in regards to that.
Excuse me, any questions? Then we have a motion on this one.
Motion moved by Stacy White, seconded by Patrick Adams. Be it resolved that report number 2020-Dev-053 entitled Waste Reduction Week 2020 be received, and that October 19th to 25th, 2020 is hereby declared by council as Waste Reduction Week in the town of Kirkland Lake.
All in favor? Carried. Item 6.5, lobby advertisement. Ms. Bonnie Sackrider, Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Owens. Through you to council. In March of this year, council did receive a report entitled Community Complex Lobby Advertising. At this time, council did direct staff to investigate options for keeping the service in-house and to bring a report back to council. And that is what you have received in your package. To prepare this report, the Directors of Corporate and Community Services, the CAO, and the Management Information Systems Coordinator met to determine what expertise and ability the town did have to keep this in-house. Determine that we do not have the experience or expertise to do something equal to the service that we currently see at the community complex that is done by Future Signs. We are able to do, however, is to certainly install a screen and the related equipment associated with that and produce slideshows that staff could populate themselves, and staff could sell the advertising if that's the direction council did wish us to pursue. And we could include in the 2021 budget the cost for incurring that expense. At this time, staff do not recommend that option, and the reasons are that it does not align with our current strategic plan, and it could be considered competition with 2 user groups that currently sell advertising within the community complex. If we were to do just a slideshow with a combination of information as well as advertising, it would be a lengthy slideshow. And from what our experience is, people are generally there for 20, 30 seconds looking at it. Unless they are waiting for someone, they might be there a little bit longer. But if they're passing through, they don't spend a lot of time. We know that this is an economically challenging year for businesses, and we're not sure this is the year that staff should be going out to the local business community to solicit advertising. And with more restrictions on businesses, we know that our small business owners in Kirkland Lake are facing challenges, and it's not the best economic time for them. So for these reasons, staff are recommending that council receive the information, take no further action, and continue the partnership with Future Sign Multimedia Displays to provide lobby advertising at the community complex. If council does not wish to pursue that option, there are a couple of other options that could be considered. We could do a standalone kiosk. That's something that does resemble an ATM machine. So you're seeing this more and more often. Some of the big benefits to this is it really does align with accessibility concerns. So this might be something to consider for the future. When you do look at the financial considerations, Treasurer Gorman did assist in costing out first 2 options, which is the existing Future Sign agreement and the in-house screening and advertising, and provide us with both a 1-year and a 5-year net return. We do not have costing right now for the standalone kiosk, but if that is something that council does wish staff to pursue, we could look at what an agreement would look like and what the costing would be for 2021 budget. If council has any questions to staff, we certainly would be willing to answer them.
Councillor White.
So what is the actual benefit to having this in the first place? When you're looking at the finances of it, we've been told quite often that $1,000 we should just disregard that in a multi-million-dollar company. So what do you feel are the true benefits to the community of having something like this in the first place?
Totally agree, Councillor White, and through you to the rest of council. The benefit is not just the financial. The benefit is that it is a method that staff utilize to provide information to the general public. So there's 2 screens within the complex. One is above the ticket booth going into the arena. So there's information such as which way the dressing rooms are. One of our most frequent questions is, where's dressing room 2? So we'll have directional arrows. We're able to provide information as to closures, special events, program registration. So we use it as information. That is the premier reason we utilize it.
Okay.
So in keeping with that, I believe that the kiosks may be something that we should look into, because with standards being accessibility standards coming up, that's definitely something that we should look into, and that is something that we'd be able to do in-house with the kiosks, correct?
We haven't done a lot of research on it. We would be, it's software that comes with it that we believe staff would have no issue with programming the software. And there's a number of different options that the kiosk could do.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, and through you to Ms. Sackrider, and you may not have the answer to this because it may be proprietary, but our agreement, we get $1,000 each year. It doesn't go up. Do you know if the advertising rates for that sign have gone up?
I do know that. So when I first did the report to council in March, I did contact Future Sign and ask them. They had kept the same rates. So we are on year 5 of a 5-year agreement. They had the same rates. So the first report indicated there were 3 different types of ads ranging from $300 to $1,450. And that's how the determination was, what the revenue that we believe Future Sign is generating versus what the revenue, we know what the town is generating based on the agreement.
Go ahead.
I'll follow up. Thank you. Yeah, the reason I asked that is most agreements, especially 5-year agreements, there is step up within it And I guess that's my concern, is that future signs at any time could increase their advertising costs. And we are stuck at $1,000 while their profits go up. And that is a concern for me. I imagine what they have is a standard contract that's offered to all the municipalities they service. I don't know if we even have any leeway to negotiate within that agreement. But I would like to see if they increase their ad rates by 3%, that we would get a 3% increase on what the town receives, or something to that effect in the contract. And that's just a suggestion. But I think if they're making more money, then we should get a bigger return as well. And they'll still be making a lot more money, because 3% of 1,000 is a lot less than 3% of what they're making off the sign. So thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah, I would not be in favor of continuing with future signs, as they are a company in Markham. Part of our strategic plan is to promote economic growth, and it's called Invest in KL, not in Markham. So at the last report that we received, the estimated annual revenue that they're getting is $9,600. So that's 96 leaving our community and investing in Markham. So I like to find a way that we can either get some user groups within our community to be a part of this and try and invest in KL, as is a part of our strategic plan. But continuing future signs does not go with our strategic plan at all.
In that line of thought, how did we offer the advertisement contracts for the arena and the pool? Is it an RFP that was sent out and those user groups bid on it?
So what happened, it was different in both locations. So in the arena, it has gone to RFP the last few times for a 3-year agreement, and council has recommended extensions to that. In terms of for the pool, it was a recommendation, the aquatic club delegated to this council, and this council directed staff that we would enter into an agreement. So it's done 2 different ways.
So to encourage local participation in this, is this a process that we can apply? Like, because the contract is basically done with future signs, right?
Correct.
This is the contract, so we can tell, because the equipment goes back to them if they leave.
Correct.
So we want the dollar advertisements to stay in the community. Great. Put the onus on the community to come up with a plan. We just go out to RFP or whatever the process would be, and have community stakeholders show interest in doing this. Is that something that would be acceptable? And it benefits the community, right?
Yes, we could do an RFP for lobby advertising.
Because I don't encourage staff having, I don't agree with staff having to sell advertisement. We're not advertisers. It's not, and it is a lot of work. Councillor White.
Sorry, I just asked clerk, how would I introduce a secondary motion to after this?
So through you, Acting Mayor Owens, currently there is a motion that we're discussing moved by Eugene Ivanoff, seconded by Stacey White. So either that can be amended to vote on, or you vote on this first and then present a second motion that you want to.
Yeah, actually, let me jump in. So parliamentary procedure is the members should move the motions, and the motions should be moved before any discussion starts. And that's something that council should look at in the future. The motions belong to the assembly and the mover and the seconder. You are not obligated to move the recommendations as presented by staff at all. So if a member of council wishes to say, I would like to move that we receive this, but I would like to add that staff be directed by the CAO to include the lobby advertising as part of the RFP for the arena board advertising. That is entirely what council should do. There is no obligation to defeat staff's recommendation, only to get to a place where the majority of council would like to be. So I would strongly recommend that members of council feel free to put forward the motion that they would wish to. And on some occasions, the member would lose the motion that they wanted to, and it might go back to the recommendation from staff. But council should take control of that.
Follow up or we go ahead?
So I would like a secondary, like a separate motion introduced to that staff be directed to bring forth a report regarding the standalone kiosks and bring it back to council before the last council meeting of 2020. So I don't know if that can be an addition. I don't know. It's Eugene's to first.
And receive this one here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Councillor White has put out.
Oh, sorry. Just, Councillor Ivanov?
I have a question for Ms. Sackrider. Would there be a user group that might be interested in taking over those boards as a fundraiser?
So we have not presented that as an option to user groups. Some user groups in the past have said that they would like to own lobby advertising, but that we have not talked about working through a backlit display that has information, only advertising. I don't know if I was clear. I think the user groups would like to sell advertising in the lobby. I'm not sure if the user groups are interested in providing a venue to disseminate information. Not saying they aren't, we haven't had a discussion.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, if they would be willing to share some of the revenue, more than $1,000, and they can raise some of that money for themselves.
Councillor Owen?
Yeah, I had quite a bit of experience with fundraising, having been president of minor hockey for a total of 4 years. And I would like to see if there is an interest. And I'm not trying to upset the apple cart here. Leave the board advertising the way it is. That give minor hockey and say the Kirkland Lake Skating Club the option, whether together or separately, to use the lobby area as a form of fundraising, and they sell the advertising and the town gets a kickback. I'm not concerned about backlit boards and all the rest of it. My concern is the local kids. And as has been mentioned, we're in COVID times, fundraising is very difficult. It was difficult enough when I was involved. So I would like to see, they may not be interested because I'm no longer in touch with those organizations. They may not be interested, but at least give them the option because they're helping local kids. And, it's right. Why send the money to Markham when we could do it another way and local kids would benefit and the town would benefit from whatever agreement. So that would be my suggestion.
May I suggest that we add to Ms. Councillor White's motion that in researching these kiosk information that we just contact the user groups to see if the interest is there and to even offer the advertisement? I'm assuming.
Okay, so the motion with Eugene and I would be to accept the report, to direct staff to contact user groups to gauge interest in advertising in the lobby, as well as the motion to direct staff to bring forth a report regarding standalone kiosks before the end of 2020.
Just one more suggestion for that would be to not continue any contract with Future Signs as part of that.
Wouldn't that be automatic till the contract comes to an end? They come and get their equipment and.
Yeah, so council directed staff to extend the 5-year agreement by 1 year. So when that 1 year is up, then there's no more direction to go further.
Okay, so they come and get their equipment.
Correct.
Okay.
one point of clarification, if I may. So there's a big difference between advertising and information giving. So in the recommendation, the kiosk would be primarily allowing people to register, get information, directional wayfinding. So the kiosk is much more of an information tool for members of the public. The option to ask the user groups if they want to sell advertising, is there a vision of what that is? Is it on a screen or is it banners? I just want to be clear on what I'm asking.
Councillor Adams.
I think the vision could be a TV that they operate with a PowerPoint slideshow. You just advertisements that come across. It's visually appealing. They're there for 20 seconds. Bloop, just see them all come across. We don't need to decorate the whole thing in banners. Certainly not in favor of that. But certainly even for the kiosk idea, if that takes away from the staff's ability to tie up other things, right? If somebody can self-use a feature, then there's the ability of somebody else to focus on other activities as well. But I would not be in favor of banners, but a TV that has a slideshow, we run them at the mine. It's just you click and you put your messaging across.
Councillor Ivanov, you had your hand, or
I'd like to hear actually your input as to what you think should be in the lobby. And you're right. I don't think you want to clutter it up with a whole bunch of stuff but something similar to what you presently have, owned by one of the local user groups might be of interest. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I envisioned when we asked this question. So I'm thinking that somebody that's willing to invest a little bit of money to get some advertising dollars and use that money to help one of the user groups, whether it's cross-country skiing or minor hockey or whatever else that you have that runs out of the complex, and there's quite a bit. So
Councillor
an
Owen.
opportunity for them.
Yeah.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, I'd like to see it left open so that if any of the volunteer groups were interested, they know what their resources are in terms of money. They know what their resources are in terms of talent. And that we put out a proposal and they come back with their ideas. And yes, ultimately the council, it would go through the recreation department, which I'm sure would make suggestions to them. Because obviously we don't want that to turn into a one huge billboard or something. But I think we need to just put out ask them if they're interested and how they would do it, and then go from there. It would ultimately come back to council for a decision. That way we're working within their financial means and within their talent that they have available to them, rather than tie them into something electronic or whatever.
Councillor White, as the mover, would you like that added in the motion?
I'm not exactly clear.
Being developed. Okay, so based on the couple things that we had going here, we have a motion moved by Stacy White, seconded by Eugene Ivanov. Be it resolved that report number 2020-CS-008 entitled Lobby Advertising be received, that staff be directed to contact user groups to gauge interest in advertising in the complex lobby, and that staff be directed to present a report on the standalone kiosks before the end of 2020.
So I think that includes.
Yeah.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, if there's no interest, there's no need to go any further. And if there is interest, that would be the point in time where we would investigate what type and whatever. So I think the motion's fine the way it reads.
Then are we ready to vote?
Would you like me to reread it?
I think I'm good with it. Okay, good to vote. Oh, that's me, right? All in favor? Carried. We skipped a step there. Okay, so item 6.5, Police Services Board recommendations. Megan Elliott, clerk.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Owens, through you to council. We had a police service board meeting on Monday, September 21st, and there were 3 items on the agenda that were referred to the police service board from council, one of which was speeding on Main Street. The second one was the additional off-road vehicles into our bylaw, and the third one was a question about protester rights and charges. So from the meeting, we had 2 motions that included recommendations that we are presenting to council today if they are in favor to pass the recommendation or if they would like to change those. So the 2 recommendations, I will read the current motion, would be to receive the report as well as staff be directed to assess the warrants to determine if Main Street should be designated a community safety zone and report back to council in Q1 of 2021, and that no action be taken to permit additional recreational vehicles to be included in the town of Kirkland Lake off-road vehicle bylaw. And if you have any questions.
Through your worship, if I may comment on the first one, I believe CAO Mr. McGee had outlined some of the requirements or the recommendations about safety zones on an application or request from a resident on King Street, I believe. And I'm just wondering if this request on Main Street kind of meets those requirements. It doesn't sound like it to me. The one thing that when we had discussion with the new commanding officer, interim commanding officer, was that they would pick up on the number of patrols on that street, in which they have started. And I did speak to him after the police services board as well, and we pushed for that. So I believe it is happening at this time. On the other motion, was the off-road vehicles. I think Councillor Owen would agree with me. There was a lengthy discussion, and the OPP were not certainly not in favor of allowing these off-road vehicles as proposed, because they had never been contacted by the Ministry of Transportation, and furthermore for their input, as well as the fact that they didn't feel they had a copy of our bylaw, and they were having difficulty in the fact that they didn't believe that they could enforce it properly because they don't have off-road vehicles. So I'd just wanted to provide that information, and possibly Councillor Owen has more to add to that.
Just before, just to add to what you said about the enforcement aspect, I watched on the weekend 2 OPP officers try to corner 2 quads up by the complex, and they're being made a mockery because there's no way to stop them. They are faster. They can have access to smaller spaces where the police cruisers cannot go. So I don't see how enforcing this would even be a possibility. Councillor Owens? Owen? Oh, I did it myself. Oh, shoot.
What did you do?
All good.
That happens when you sit in that chair.
Anyways, yeah, you know, it's interesting dealing with the police board when it comes to political matters, because police are apolitical. So it's kind of a little bit of prodding to get them to sort of say what they're really thinking. But with the off-road vehicle things, they are already having a problem with enforcement, and they openly admit it. I mean, if you've got a dirt bike and it's on the road, it can go off the road down the laneway, wherever, it's gone. Having said that, they have had some success in charging people. They've also had some success in determining where some of these people live so they can go talk to them to try and deter their behavior. But they definitely said enforcement would be a problem for them as well. And I'd forgotten until Mayor Pat said it. Yeah, the OPP were not consulted on these changes, which normally would happen. And according to our new interim detachment commander, for the dirt bikes to be on the road, they would have to be licensed and have insurance. Now, my understanding, and I got the impression that this is true from the police, in order for them to be licensed, they would have to have a headlight, a tail light. I'm not sure about blinkers. And those kits are available, but I don't know too many dirt bikers that would want to put a kit on their dirt bike. So it definitely, the OPP, we're not in favor of it. And quite frankly, since then, when I've been sitting in my living room with a very active, almost 4-year-old grandson and a 9-month-old baby, whenever an ATV goes by my house, it's definitely noisy. So I don't think adding more noise to the streets is going to improve the life in Kirkland Lake. They can push them to their trails. They can trailer them to the trails. They're not huge bikes. So, and the 6-wheel vehicles, I don't think we have a lot of them in town, enough to justify changing the law to allow the few that we do have. I know there was concern stated about commercial use, industrial use, but they have trailers. And that's just part of the cost of doing business, in my opinion.
Councillor Adams.
Yep, I would be in favor of allowing these vehicles onto our roads. We have a very successful snowmobile club, and when you see our hotels in the winter, they are jammed packed with snowmobiles as they are enjoying the trails that we currently have. A lot of other communities out there have great ATV and side-by-side clubs that look after and manage trails. If we allow this opportunity, this would be a great investment in Kirkland Lake to help support our local businesses that exist. And if you speak to some of the owners of some of the recreational vehicle businesses that exist out there, this has been one of the best years for sales as people are staying home and choosing to buy these types of vehicles. And if we can provide them the opportunity to come to our community as well, even to check out the trails and put some money into our community, I'd be all in favor. There's regulations that exist out there. This was a provincial decision, and I support it at the municipal level to allow these on our streets.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but ATVs, 4-wheelers are already allowed on the streets. Skidoos are allowed on the streets, so that would not change. But the only thing that would be modified would be the use of a motocross. But unless it's insured, plated, and you've got lights on them, you still can't have access to the streets. So basically, there's not a lot that's going to change with this new approach, right, Councillor White? Or
So looking over the information that was provided at the Police Services Board, it does say municipalities will continue to have the authority and make decisions about ORVs by way of bylaw to permit ORVs, only allow specific ORVs on the road. So we can opt out of not allowing dirt bikes if that's the biggest concern, and just allow the 6 or more wheeled vehicles. When this first came to council, I was in support of it because we are surrounded by trails and forest, and we are a recreational town if we choose to be. So in reading that we can pick and choose which vehicles we allow would greatly benefit. On the second item, which is really the first item, the Main Street, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody in the departments know, I believe that it currently still has signage up saying that it is a community safety zone, because at one time the schools were located along that stretch. And so currently right now, the maximum speed limit is 40 So, and there's issues with speeding now. So signage, I don't think it'll be a false sense of security for that area. I think the most important thing that happened by bringing it to police services is the fact that there'll be more police services in that area and police patrols. I don't think, as the mayor has stated, it actually lines up with the needs of what is defined as a community safety zone. Because there are certain things, one being a collision prone area, a school zone, seniors, there's several kind of highlights that would have to be hit or could be hit, and that does no longer apply on Main Street. So I do appreciate the more patrols in that area, but putting up more signage is not the answer.
Megan, Miss Elliott.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Owens. Just to touch base, yes, so we currently do have an off-road vehicle bylaw that does permit a number of these vehicles. The discussion is only based on I think it's 2 classifications that were added in July. So that's what we're debating, if we want to include those in our bylaw or not. And on the second topic for the Main Street, through the Police Services Board, the conversation was about the speeding and if there's issues, and they mentioned they will go out and take a look. And then that flowed into that there is already community safety zone signage, and just, do we need that? So.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, I brought it up about the community safety zone on that street because King George School is no longer there. And what I felt was really unfair was that your fines are doubled in a community safety zone. And so if it doesn't qualify as a community safety zone, I don't think it's right that the people get fined double. Also, in talking here, the speed limit there is 40, right? Now, there is a perception that there is speeding on that street. But are the people going 50? Which would be the normal speed in other parts of the town. So if the district doesn't, if that street doesn't meet the requirements, which I do not believe it does, of a community safety zone, then I think we should change the bylaw so that becomes 50 kilometers an hour. And as the new commander said, and we've heard this before, sometimes visually it looks like people are speeding when in fact they're not. It's a optical thing that I don't understand, but we also ran into that on
So a few years ago, there was a great debate around this table when Mary, you know, I was still here, about Taylor Avenue and the 4-way stop at the corner of LaBelle.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying 4-way stop, no way. Now, well, the language was more colorful, but it came to it wasn't going to happen in his lifetime. It did happen, and it seems to work. Main Street is a long stretch. Wouldn't a stop sign just act as a calming measure at like I know I don't know what the opposition is in Kirkland to 4-way stops, but I've never understood it. They work everywhere else in the world except for Kirkland Lake doesn't like them. So wouldn't it, like, I don't know, I Councillor Adams?
Yeah, on Main Street, there's the Road Safety Coalition, and I know there's a lot of ideas, and Ashley has reported back to us on some of the ideas of slowing down vehicles. One of them is the use of radar signs that have been proven to dramatically reduce. But as I received a concern from one of the residents who actually live on Main Street, and I'll actually just take the time to read it. I live on the corner of Main Street and Taylor. My kids cross the street to go to Kinross and have almost been hit twice this summer by people speeding. There are 0 stop signs on the street or crosswalks and low visibility due to the slope of the road at my intersection. I have been contemplating looking into asking for a crosswalk at Taylor and Main Street, seeing as it is the busiest intersection used to go to Kinross by bike or foot. Would it be beneficial to have a radar speed sign along the road or have people realize how fast they're going? 3 nights ago, my husband and I heard a vehicle go through 3 gear changes between Porteous and Taylor, going at least 80 kilometers an hour past my house. It's only a matter of time until someone gets hurt badly. I stand outside to watch my kids cross the street and they aren't allowed to ride their bikes across. The area is busting with kids, which is amazing, but I fear us being careful and teaching our kids road safety isn't enough at this point. We have lived here for almost 16 years and it is the worst we've ever seen it. Please help us.
Councillor White.
And that absolutely speaks to the need. We've heard, this council alone has heard about Grierson Road, the speed there, Main Street, in Chappius throughout the village. Alan, we've heard time and time again that people not following traffic laws are the issue. That's what it comes down to. So if they're not following the signage as posted today, is signage the answer? Definitely with the radar, that could be a deterrent. More police presence, absolutely. Because having signs that state fines doubled are only good if there's somebody actually there to catch you and give you the fine. So my thing is there's definitely a traffic issue because it's coming up time and time again, and perhaps it's time that administration and council look further into that townwide.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, and I happen to live on 3rd Street, and at 3rd Street in Allen, at my height, I cannot see cars coming from the direction of the complex. I have a almost 4-year-old grandson. He's in JK now and he'll be in kindergarten next year, but after that, he's going to have to cross that intersection. Now, if at 6 feet I can't see the cars coming, he's not going to be able to see the cars coming. And we have problems with speeding there too. The people are on their way to work, they take their kids to school, and then they boot it back up the street to get to work on time. We also have the same problem when there's a major event at the complex. The people rush out their cars to get first in line so they don't get slowed down, and they boot it up there. I think we need to do some sort of review of some of our streets. And again, Allen is similar to Main Street. It's not as long, but it's a long straight stretch with hills in it. And I'd love to see a stop sign on Allen. I'd love to see a stop sign on Main Street as well. Main and Taylor makes sense. But I think we need some sort of guidance from staff before we go willy-nilly about changing things. I thought we had included purchasing some of those radar signs in our last budget. I was also in Oshawa. I got lost and I ended up in a traffic calming neighborhood where they had speed bumps. It wasn't pleasant. I wasn't speeding, but I'm really reluctant to go that direction. But I have no problems with the, in fact, in Oshawa, it was a 2-lane situation coming into the speed sign, and it was split screen, so it caught both cars' speeds as you were going towards it. So there are measures we can take, but I think we need direction from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. So through you to council, I'm not sure that Kirkland Lake has ever heard the term traffic warrants. Warrants. So warranted to be treated. So Mr. Roberti has experience, as does his department. He will be assigned to anything with respect to road-related traffic signage in accordance with the regulatory books. And I believe we sent council an email referencing Book 6 and Book 15. Staff would recommend extreme caution with respect to, and I'll use a term I just heard, willy-nilly approaches to the treatment of transportation signage. And I can advise that the warrant system, when done properly, take into account a number of factors which Mr. Roberti could highlight better than I can, but collision data, traffic counts, sight lines, the vertical and horizontal placements of the intersections, and various things that staff put into a warrant formula. And in consultation with stakeholders such as the OPP and community groups, they look at it. The worst thing you could possibly do is erect a stop sign in a location where it ought not to be erected, and a fatality or an injury occur as a result of a motorist not expecting there to be a stop sign in a place where there should not be a stop sign. And then the municipality would be even more liable for doing something contrary to what the regulatory regime would suggest. If council wants to look at this, this is a major project and it's multifaceted. And as I've heard, enforcement is one of the keys. You can treat everything under the sun, but if enforcement isn't in place, it doesn't mean anything. And enforcement should be done according to problem areas as identified by data, not by opinion. And I've seen throughout the years where ratepayer organizations and individuals perceive there to be a problem, and when we've erected the speed sign, which collects data, it proves that there isn't a problem. I've also seen where the most aggressive traffic officers have been assigned to locations and they call their supervisors pleading to be reassigned because they're bored to death because they can't issue tickets because nobody's violating the laws. So that would be staff's recommendation. I can speak, I believe, on behalf of Mr. Roberti. Any treatments that we look to put in place, we want to ensure that there is justification and defense to enforce that, so that if it does go to court, it is upheld by a justice of the peace or a judge. And it also mitigates any exposure that the municipality may have to erecting signage. I can also advise, and this goes back to the last conversation at council with respect to asphalt surfacing. And one of the things that we must always take into consideration is that everybody wants their road to be perfectly paved and beautiful. But what happens when roads are perfectly paved? Speeds pick up. And traffic calming as a result of that is sometimes managed to a certain degree. And I've seen neighborhoods where people don't want their roads resurfaced because if they are, people use them as shortcuts around thoroughfares and they don't want that motorist traffic in their neighborhood. The other thing you'll get, and I think I did hear it here, is when a road is in very good condition, you get the call for speed bumps. Transportation people like Mr. Roberti do not want to install speed bumps. They breach the road surfaces when you install them. They cause other problems. They're typically removed for snow plowing season. And not to be glib about the matter, but when you highlight and identify to the public and the neighborhoods that you have speed bumps right now, they're just inverted. Do you really want the expense of that road to be resurfaced? And then we're going to have to install speed bumps to address the next issue that will arise. So extreme caution as we proceed through this so that we do it methodically and that each decision maximizes the investment and also the outcome so that residents aren't displeased at the outcome that arises as a result of council's efforts to try and do something good.
Councillor White.
Absolutely, Mr. Rivety. Mr. McGee. If our Mr. Rivety is a traffic expert, why aren't we using him in that capacity to ensure all these issues are mitigated? Councillor Owens and I were just talking about the very haphazard placement and strange placement of signs all around town. One example is we have a green parking sign next to the corner of Government and Prospect, a big parking sign, a big P, because we have a municipal parking lot. Nowhere else do we have that sign, even though we have at least 2 other municipal parking lots. So we have all this signage that have been put in place over the years, over the decades. Sometimes we have a stop sign in merge lane because people of Kirkland Lake wanted it with no rhyme or reason. So it is a very large problem that our signage is not cohesive throughout town. So it's really good to know that we have an expert on staff.
And I just remind council that he's one individual who has many tasks, and Rome wasn't built overnight. So.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, people that have been around long enough will remember when they decided to switch the through lane on Kirkland Street here in front of town. And it resulted in numerous accidents. And then it was reverted back. And that's an example of when something was done to meet one specific group's request. But to suggest that we ignore our roads because they're safe or bumpy and smooth just doesn't sit well with me. Our roads are disgusting. It's no secret.
Can I make a suggestion? We are way off topic now. I think the
I
two
didn't
topics.
introduce
No,
this
I know.
topic.
It was pointed to
Okay,
me.
so I
that-
shouldn't be cut off.
No, it was pointed to me to try and bring us back onto topic. So I'm
By
doing
the
the
person who introduced the
he
rough
pointed that
roads
out
to
as well.
start
So I'm
with.
doing the dirty work and bringing us back on
Okay, and
topic so
I'm
we
just
can.
voicing my objection to the rule.
Objection noted. Councillor Adams.
Yep, just for the last one, item 610, protester rights. I'm really thankful that the mayor took this one to the police service board, as when the question was brought forward, it was met with freedom of speech. And I'm really thankful that the individual didn't get the ability to have freedom of speech, as some of the abuse and language that he was using within those signs that was questioned, he was actually charged, as probably the mayor can confirm. So thank you very much for pushing that one through, Mr. Mayor, as that is the appropriate response I'd be looking for that. Thank you.
I believe we have a motion on this one.
So the current motion is moved by Rick Owen, seconded by Eugene Ivanoff. Be it resolved that memorandum number 2020-CLK-006 entitled Police Service Board Recommendations be received, that staff be directed to assess the warrants to determine if Main Street should be designated a community safety zone and report back to council in Q1 of 2021, and that no action be taken to permit additional recreational vehicles to be included in the Town of Kirkland Lake off-road vehicle bylaw.
Councillor Owen, is that okay? That's okay. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? So one opposed. Item 6.7, training, education and development policy. Cassandra Young, Human Resources Supervisor.
So thank you, Acting Mayor Owens, and through you to council. So the strategic plan identifies the need to review and update policies. So today I'm presenting to you an amended and updated education, training, and development policy, where staff recommends that council approves. So in summary, the changes to the current policy include an addition of an eligibility criteria to clearly identify the conditions that must be met. Also a replacement of the current absence and no absence form, from work and approval sections to include them in the new application of approval procedure section. Also a replacement of the current employee commitment and education support sections to include them in the new reimbursement section, and an inclusion of the seminar convention reports policy. So I am available to answer any questions should there be any.
Councillor White.
Just one. In the policy statement, it says encourage all permanent staff, so that includes full-time and part-time.
Yes, that is correct.
Excellent, thank you.
I believe there's no more questions. We have a motion.
Motion moved by Stacy White, seconded by Rick Owen. Be it resolved that report number 2020-HR-006 entitled Training, Education, and Development Policy be received, that Council for the Corporation of the Town of Kirkland Lake hereby approves the revised policy as presented, and that staff be directed to insert the approved policy into the corporate policy manual and upload the training, education, and development policy to the town's website.
All in favor? Carried. Item 6.8, Kirkland Lake Water Treatment Plant PLC and SCADA replacement. Michelle Riberty, Director of Public Works.
Through you, Acting Mayor Owens, to Council. Though, as you well know, the water treatment plant PCL, PLC and SCADA replacement needs to be replaced as soon as possible. It's at risk of failing, which would result in business interruption and additional costs to the operation. If we don't repair the SCADA now, Aqua would be obliged to operate that plant 24/7, which would the cost would be fairly high until we do replace the SCADA replacement, the SCADA and PLC. So we gave the Aqua Clean Water Agency we gave them the lead on this project. So to prepare and manage the request for bid, and we have assisted them through the process. So we had a mandatory virtual site tour, was well attended. We had 44 bidders that downloaded the request. They were part of the process. And through that process, we had 8 bidders for that submitted a bid. So we went through the process through stages, and so we do recommend to proceed with Stroma Automation Solutions for this project. They were the lowest bid at $155,892.92. So through the process, we had concerns between Aqua and ourselves. So we took an extra step to this. So we invited the Stroma to come to site to review the plant, and through that process, we found out that there's omissions and errors and items that we missed through to the bidding process. So basically, this adds additional cost to this project, and as identified in the report. So basically, we're basically adding approximately $60,000 to Stroma Automation Solutions to their bid. That would have applied to all bidders that submitted. So that would have been additional cost to everyone. So basically, Stroma would still remain in the first place. In addition, we do need Aqua to provide services to assist in implementing and through various process. So in order to do this, as you will, if you remember, through the 2020 budget process, we had energy efficiencies at the water treatment plant project that didn't go forward due to we weren't successful with the funding application. So basically what we're looking at is reallocating the funds that was associated to that and in order to proceed with this project. And we would allocate more funding in 2021 to complete this project. So basically we plan to start this fall with the project, and this will continue on till perhaps May or June of next year. So basically Stroma would be programming and preparing, getting the supplies and so on. But the major part of the project would be next year. And basically that aligns with our financial plan that we've brought forward to the last council meeting. And that's part of the implementation of items through our process to improve our plant, to maintain our plant. Therefore, we do recommend to proceed with awarding the project to Stroma Automation Solutions.
I think it's pretty amazing as to where, when this was first brought to council, the price was a lot higher. It's gone down to where it's not as scary. I think amazing work has been done on this as to get bids out there and to get our options and look at everything. As a councillor, I'm pretty happy to see that. I mean, still a big amount, but it's a lot less scary than whatever that first amount was. I don't remember the numbers, but I know it was pretty big. Councillor White.
Absolutely. I just want to thank Mr. Liberty for the report. It walked us through the procedure and your train of thought, and it was very easy to understand how you came to everything. And I think council and the public really appreciate a concise report that really lets them understand how the process works. This is excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Councillor White. When I was looking at it, the first thing jumped out at me was, how could it possibly be that low when the other bids are so high? And then as I read on, you gave the explanation that you'd gone the extra step to check, which just, again, shows the level of professionalism we have within our staff. I have one question. Is this a Microsoft Word-based program or is it a script program?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. The SCADA is going to be, I believe I did mention the components in the document. But if if we do have issues with this supplier, we can use another supplier to get the plant back online. And right now you have that situation that you have issues with the existing. So we did have to have extra steps just because of the sole proprietor for this existing system. So we do have to do a narrative. We need to do some extra steps that we shouldn't have to do at this point.
The only reason I'm asking that is because Councillor Perrier, who's not here tonight, when this project first came up, he said that all the modern systems are going with the Microsoft Word program, and that script was becoming the dinosaur, was much harder to work with, and blah, blah, blah. And so it's kind of important what system we're using here. I suspect it's Microsoft because you're saying there's no ownership problems.
Yeah, I believe so. Actually, we invited Councillor Perrier with us as a technical advisor, and he was quite pleased through the process.
Okay, well, I take your word on that. If Councillor Perrier is pleased, I'm pleased too. And I'm pleased for the ratepayers because it came in a lot less than what was originally predicted.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah, the $26,000, where does that come from? to pay for it. So council approves $26,000 to the Ontario Clean Water Agency for support services to facilitate. Is that part of the operational budget?
That would be part of the 250,000 between the 2 years.
Okay. And then the $90,000 for 2021. So that's kind of towards that 1% kind of pre-approval for next year. So do you have any like surplus left that was identified during our budget discussions for 2020?
At this point, we'd have to come back with a figure for surplus. We will be doing capital reporting probably in the next meeting of council through 9 months of the year. So we should have some trending towards to understand a bit more. The way the resolution reads, basically the residual values, whatever was unspent this year would be rolled into the 2021 budget.
CEO's got a comment. Thank
Through
you.
Your worship, to Mr. Riverty, Pat speaking. I too I'm pleased with the expertise and the amount of work, the going extra mile, and also involving Councillor Perrier, because he was the first one to note when the original quotes come in, as Casey had mentioned, the cost was astronomical, and he didn't believe we had to go that route. So allowing him to participate in that review process was much appreciated, and he was familiar with that system, worked on it for years. So all around, kudos, job well done.
CEO. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Through you to council. So just to help out with respect to the budget, and Mr. Gorman can correct me on any of this. So number one, this is water and wastewater related, which is a user rate budget. And there are reserves that exist to cover the costs of water and wastewater related items or debt that would be directly attributed to the water and wastewater users to pay back over a number of years if it was a major infrastructure project that warranted debt being incurred. With respect to this item, so make no mistake, you are pre-approving $90,000 for the 2021 budget. Mr. Gorman will identify that in the 2021 budget when it comes forward. It will be financed from the water and wastewater reserves budget or from the user rates. And just because a capital project is put in front of council doesn't mean that the tax levy automatically increases. Within the corporate budget on an annual basis, X number of dollars are identified for capital. And there is a shift between capital dollars, operating dollars, grants, and what happens. And Mr. Gorman identifies that every year that he puts forward a budget. So for instance, in 2020, when the budget came forward, there was no increase suggested as a result of the capital budget. The budget increase came forward as part of the operating budget, which consolidated the capital. But there shouldn't be a mistake made that somehow the capital budget automatically means some type of increase. You have to wait to see the consolidated budget to know what the overall impact is going to be. And at no point was I concerned that there was any type of double-digit tax increase to the taxpayers of Kirkland Lake. And as we saw, it was a 2% budget increase approximately. And Mr. Gorman may wish to correct any of my misstatements, but I think I was pretty bang on.
Any corrections?
No, just to speak to what Mr. McGee was speaking of. Within the initial energy efficiencies budget, we had earmarked 166,000 out of the waterworks reserve funds. And essentially those would carry over to cover this.
So do we have a motion on this one as well?
We have a motion moved by Patrick Adams, seconded by Eugene Ivanoff. Be it resolved that report number 2020-PW-005 entitled Kirkland Lake Water Treatment Plant PLC and SCADA replacement be received. That council hereby awards the Kirkland Lake Water Treatment Plant PLC and SCADA replacement to Stroma Automation Solutions at an upset limit of $215,236.97, HST excluded. That council approved $26,125.89, HST excluded, to the Ontario Clean Water Agency for support services to facilitate the Kirkland Lake Water Treatment Plant PLC and SCADA replacement project. That staff is hereby authorized to execute the necessary documents to complete the terms and conditions of RFB number Aqua 056 KL SCADA. That council authorizes the reallocation of $160,000 from the Energy Efficiency Capital Project to the SCADA upgrade in the 2020 approved capital budget, with the residual amount carried forward as a 15-month project into the 2021 capital budget. And that staff be directed to include $90,000 in the 2021 capital budget for SCADA upgrades as a pre-approved project.
All in favor? Carried. Item 6.9, 6.9, sorry. Award of RFT 55720 supply and delivery of winter sand. Michelle Riberty, Director of Fiscal Public Works.
Through you, Acting Mayor Owens, to council. This report is presented to recommend the award of the winter sand to A. Myron. We did receive two submissions. Mr. Myron, A. Myron Topsoil was the lowest of the bidders. This is an operation that takes place every year to maintain the road system during the winter months to meet and exceed the minimum maintenance standards and to ensure that our roads are safe and well maintained. So therefore, as presented, we're looking to award this contract to A. Myron Topsoil Limited.
Councillor White.
Is it very common that something that is required every year, the contract only goes out once a year? Like, wouldn't it be more cost effective to do this project over several years? Or is it just the way Kirkland Lake does it?
Well, it varies. The one item that comes out is based on quantities. Sometimes a year is going to be less, sometimes another year is going to be more. So as the quantity increases, you may get a better price. So that's one of these items, unless you can quantify a specific quantity for a 2-year term, but it varies. Unfortunately, we don't have a winter sand building to accommodate these quantities, and it gets affected if if they're already processed mixed with the salt. They're at the element out there.
Any more questions? We've got a motion.
Motion moved by Stacey White, seconded by Patrick Adams. Be it resolved that report number 2020-PW-008, entitled Award of RFT-557-20, Supply and Delivery of Winter Sand, be received. That council hereby awards RFT-557-20, Supply and Delivery of Winter Sand to A. Myron Topsoil Limited in the amount of $29,560 plus HST. And that staff is hereby authorized to execute the necessary documents to complete the terms of RFT-557-20.
All in favor? Carried. Item 7, consideration of notices of motions, non-noted. Item 8, introduction, reading, and consideration of bylaws.
Motion moved by Rick Owen, seconded by Patrick Adams. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time, numbered, passed, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. Bylaw number 20-080, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with William DeRoche for a portion of municipal property located at the Kirkland Lake Municipal Airport.
All in favor? Carried. Item 9, questions from council to staff. Item 9.1, audible crosswalk. Councillor Patrick Adams.
Yes, I received this concern from a resident. I know your acting mayor, you brought this up as a concern once, that you were able to hear it when you lived over just.
Yep.
But like no direction was provided. So hopefully with this opportunity, we can at least maybe see if there's alternatives to the constant beeping, as somebody has brought forward that concern as a resident.
I'd like to add to this. I've had another resident living in a downtown core bring that concern forward. It is not so much now because winter's coming, but in the summer months, that chirping sound all day long, day and night is, it's aggravating. And I know we have to be compliant in that sense, but there's got to be some way to alleviate this.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. So this is a good example of where the CGIS tracking system would work beautifully, and residents could call in or submit their online form. I think it's fair to say that these traffic signal enunciators have been a challenge from day one, and Mr. Roberti is trying to address it and bring the resources in and find the resources to address them as expeditiously as possible. But quite honestly, if residents put their requests forward in the CGIS system, the tracking system is probably more expeditious than waiting to come to council and trying to figure out something as simple as an operational issue that way. And if and when, and they will, an item drops through the cracks, just contact staff again and we'll do our best to try and appease everybody's concerns relating to this particular topic or any other operational issue.
Through you, your worship, if I may comment, I know when this came up for discussion recently as well, there was a suggestion that if the supplier was not coming up with a manner or some resolve to this issue, that we contact the manufacturer of the equipment directly. And I'm wondering if that has taken place or still being considered. It hasn't improved a heck of a lot. It's still pretty noisy, but part of it is, as you say, during the summer months.
Yeah, I think through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to council, I think the first issue was looking after the accessibility component for the person with disability, visual disability in the community. I think we resolved that. And then the noise issue has arisen as well. So I think it's one of those trial and error issues that we're going to continue to work on. And Mr. Roberti has retained the resources that are working on this, and we may turn it down. And then the next complaint will be is that it's not heard loud enough. So not sure council wants to invest their time in this at council meetings, and when we can probably address it.
Agree.
Do we have a motion then? Or is it just?
So we have a motion moved by Patrick Adams, seconded by Eugene Ivanoff. Be it resolved that the question from Councillor Patrick Adams regarding the audible crosswalk be received.
All in favor? Carried. Item 10, notices of motion, none noted. Item 11, councilors' reports. Mayor Kiley?
Yes. Couple of things to note. I know there's been a number of residents wondering what the town's approach was for Halloween night. I'm pleased to report the Chamber of Commerce has an event that they're organizing, just putting the fine tuning to it. That took place for discussion today at noon during our chamber meeting, and I'm not going to steal their thunder. I like what they're proposing, and they will be making an announcement very shortly. So that should answer the public's concern. Councillor Ivanoff brought to my attention, and it's something I think council must keep in mind, that with the onslaught of increased positive testing for COVID ID, while it's still been, fairly well or good results in our area, that the numbers are getting pretty scary. And there's 3 or 4 council members that I would say are in a position that that they're more likely to be exposed to COVID ID. And we have to keep in mind, if we have to switch to Zoom meetings, that that should be an option that we consider. So I'm just leaving it on the table for food for thought. Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe, isn't that already an option? The bylaw, we voted on that a few months ago, that we have the option to switch back and forth if we need to. So,
Okay, so
and
I'm just reminding us that this may have to be done. That's
I
all.
will just remind that comment that was made by Councillor Adams at the last meeting, as long as those councillors you're identifying as being at risk, me being in the classroom with a number of students and kids being in the classroom, as long as the province is given the go ahead on that, I do not see a reason why we can't be, if the risk is okay in the classroom, it's okay sitting right here tonight.
Appreciate your thoughts.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, the numbers in Temiskaming have stayed rather stagnant and stable. And I think that's a testament to the fact that people in Temiskaming are taking heed to what the public health is telling us to do. And as long as the numbers in Temiskaming remain relatively low, I see no reason to change in-person meetings. Personally, I look out here tonight, there's people here from the public. They obviously prefer to come in person. I like to deal in person. So until our numbers go up, I think we should leave it the way it is.
That's what I'm proposing.
Councillor
Yep.
Adams has
So
his-
everyone has the ability to choose what they would like to do for this. So as his worship is currently at home, that's an opportunity that's available. If any other members of council wants to choose to do that, go straight ahead. But for as long as my 5 and 4-year-old are in a classroom without masks, with 30 other kids, I will be in this room. Thank you.
And just to add, not to fearmonger, like the health units are working hand in hand with the schools. Like the procedures are in place. I'm not saying it's foolproof, but it's safe. I feel safe going into work in the morning. Health units involved on a daily basis with the school boards, and like our school board covers 2 different health units, and they're working hand in hand with both school boards. It's being managed. So like, let's not put the horse or the cart ahead of the horse on this one. Or is that, yeah. Anybody? Oh, so yeah. Anybody else? Motion.
Motion moved by Stacey White, seconded by Rick Owen. Be it resolved that the verbal updates from members of council be received.
All in favor? Approve. We're at 12. Item additional information, item 12.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Owens. Through you to council, this is just notice to let you know that we will be having a report from our Integrity Commissioner that will be on the October 20th agenda.
Motion.
So we have a motion moved by Eugene Ivanoff, seconded by Stacey White. Be it resolved that the verbal notice of an Integrity Commissioner report coming to the October 20th, 2020 regular meeting of council be received.
All in favor? Carried. Item 13, moving into a closed session of council.
Motion moved by Rick Owen, seconded by Patrick Adams. Be it resolved that council move into a closed session pursuant to section 239(2) to discuss one land disposition matter.